I've kind of set it as my goal to be as entertaining as beer and basketball, so we'll see what I can do. I'm talking about fairly dorky, wonky kind of stuff. I'm going to be talking about taxes and tax base and community design. But oftentimes when we think of this, we don't put it in context about what it means for our land use choices and how we develop cities. So what I like to do with most audiences is I'll just go ahead and put my lessons up front and give you, if you could take away anything for this presentation from here going forward, I want you to think of cities like DNA, like I have a DNA. Cities are all places in time. Memphis has grown up to a certain extent and made decisions in its life, good and bad. What have those choices rendered? What does Memphis want to be when it grows up? And I'm from Asheville, North Carolina, and we're constantly looking at other cities to learn from them, to learn from examples. So if you want to see how I started life, this is me when I had hair, and when I was 3 months old, the angry baby. But that's me, and this is what I'm going to become, right? So I know I'm going to be Papa, whether I like it or not. You know this with your own families. You look at your family members and you see your trajectory. The good habits, the bad habits, the good growth issues, the bad growth issues. I look more importantly at this guy, my dad. And I've got two genetic issues. I'm genetically Italian, so I talk with my hands a lot. We also eat a lot. We also have a genetic predisposition to heart disease. So I know that's in my genes. I know that I'm going to have those issues. So what do I do with that? I have to make choices on that growth pattern. That's a growth pattern that's not necessarily a positive growth pattern, but it's a pattern that I have to deal with nonetheless. So if I do eat a lot, like Italians do, I have to exercise. I have to do other things to deal with that growth issue, right? So in Asheville, we're looking at Atlanta, we're looking at Charlotte, we're seeing their heart attacks and treating them like my family. We're trying to find a way to deal with that. So on college game day, I like eating chicken wings. It's my habit. I have to do it. Every college game day, I'm eating chicken wings. Well, I exercise on Sunday. Did y'all get that? So it's just compensating. We do this. The other thing about cities is I'm going to give you all a little test. Who was in the conference this afternoon? Don't shut out the answers to this. Okay, we're going to do a quick little test. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. You only need about 5. Well, somebody complained today. I'll give you 7. 7 seconds to tell me how many shapes you see in this children's puzzle. Ready? Go. Okay, how many shapes did you all see? 9? 18.
35.
35, all right. Anybody want to go higher than 35? Lower than 9? No? All right. How many kids did you all see on the bus? What time was it on the clock? No. What happens is we have a human mechanism that we can be really quick about filtering information. So I manipulated the way that you saw the image, the puzzle. You didn't see the 5 kids on the bus. You didn't see that it was 10 after 10, right? As an animal, we're really good at filtering information. And in a pressure situation, I just put you in a pressure situation. It wasn't really all that crucial. But you went into survival mode. You eliminated everything on the table to count shapes, right? We do this time and time again. We don't think of all the ramifications of deciding something that's a really big impact on our community. We've filtered out information by the time it makes it to a council decision. Have you thought through everything? Do you understand all the impacts? What information is actually at the table? What's the question that we're asking? This happens time and time again, and we're dealing with the results of generations of these kinds of decisions. Do y'all get that? There's a book that actually digs deeper into this. As a Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economist. His name is Daniel Kahneman. The book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. It gets into this through the whole thing. It's a really thick book. But basically, this is the simple trick. Did y'all get that? So know these 2 lessons. Think of who your role model is. Understand the issues of those growth patterns. But also dig deeper into how you're asking questions about data. Does that all make sense? So let's start the show. So what I want to do is get you to, I'm going to ask the question about what a city is, and try to challenge myself to bring you the information about how I think of cities and the questions that we ask in looking at cities. So I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. Who's been to Asheville? Oh, great. Thanks for visiting Asheville. It's up there in western part of North Carolina. By the way, we are in the barbecue zone, in the pig section. We're kind of near the vinegar border, and definitely not in the yellow sauce area, so I'm just going to go ahead and make that clear. For those of you that know yellow sauce, I don't like it, it's not good. But, so that's where Asheville is. Asheville started, this is how it started in the 1800s. It was a development out in the mountains, and it was always kind of a recreational area for people from Charleston. And then this is kind of how it was in the late 1800s. 30 years after this picture was taken, and for those of you that have been to Asheville, you actually stood in this spot. 30 years after, this is called the Drover's Corner, but it's the main intersection. 30 years later, this is the same shop. We like to say that the 3 T's made Asheville grow: trains, tourism, and tuberculosis. Now, once the train lines came up there, it brought people to Asheville for the clean mountain air and for the recreation. People would summer up in Asheville to escape either in the south, the polluted cities like Jacksonville and Charleston, or in the north, Cleveland, Cincinnati, in New York. We had the second streetcar line in the entire country. Richmond, Virginia was the only one that was ahead of us. Presidents came to visit, presidents still come to visit. And during the 1920s, we were growing at 20% in population every single year throughout the decade. During that time, we became the second largest city in North Carolina. Not a lot of people realize that. The only city bigger than us was Winston-Salem. We were bigger than Charlotte, Raleigh. And it's kind of insane how fast we grew. And in fact, that was the tallest building in North Carolina for about a year and a half. But during that time, we achieved the highest debt per capita of the entire United States. We were #1 in debt. And when the Depression hit and our books were audited, we thought we had $5 million in the bank. It turned out we had $18,000 in the bank. Little clerical error there. Our city council was indicted, and then 3 days later, the mayor committed suicide. That's how we entered the Depression. Not a clean start, right? And to show you how bad it was, this is a great quote from Thomas Wolfe. Thomas Wolfe is the famous American author, Asheville native, born and raised in Asheville. And this is what he had to say about his hometown. Asheville has squandered fabulous sums. They've flung away the earnings of a lifetime. They've mortgaged those of a generation to come. They have ruined the city. And in doing so, they've ruined themselves, their children, and their children's children. Those are pretty heavy words, right? And in a way that he was prescient. He actually called what was going on. Now, these are not the kind of things you say about your hometown. He said it from New York City, and basically everybody in Asheville was like, please stay in New York City, don't ever come back. His second book was incidentally called You Can't Go Home Again, for obvious reasons. You know, it's kind of interesting. You see this story all the time. What happens in the city, what happens to the people that are critiquing it. Now, what's interesting is it took us until 1976 to pay off that debt. When the Depression hit, we chose not to take the New Deal money that would bail us out. We essentially chose to ignore the stimulus. We were the proto-Tea Party of the world. We're like, we don't need that federal dollars, take it away. Well, it took us until 1976 to pay off that debt. During that period, we had a really poor bond rating. We were essentially too poor to do anything. But once we got out of that, we started cooking with gas. We did the highways like everybody else. We cut a highway through the north side of downtown, which became the Crosstown Expressway, and blew a hole through the mountain. This is called the Bowcatcher Cut right here. I love that it's on a postcard, isn't that awesome? And on the other side of the cut, the mall went there, and our downtown died. Does that sound familiar? You know, this is a pattern that happened all across the country. This is essentially the teenage years of the American city, the reckless driving, and drove a drunk into a tree or something. That's what we did. And this is our downtown from not too long ago. And has anybody visited Asheville when it looked like this? I mean, this is a great real estate investment opportunity right here. Why don't y'all come and invest in Asheville? This is a 1996 Chevy Celebrity. That's not too long ago. So you think about that. You think about what happened to our community. These are all shots of boarded up buildings, vacant upper stories, and just buildings sitting fallow. Some kinds of aluminum, just kind of hoping that they just disappear or something. Now you could shoot a cannon off down, look at the sidewalk. There isn't a single pedestrian all the way down there or anywhere along there. So we essentially abandoned our downtown. And like a Greek choir, anytime somebody tried to fix the downtown, anybody tried to do something downtown, those children's children, the leadership of our community, would rise up and say, that'll never work here, don't even try. We've been down that road, you know? Y'all have those people here? Don't even try. That'll never work. Now, every community's got them. Ours just took the form of leadership. So there were people that did try, that did do things differently. This is Julian Price. Julian started a real estate development company called Public Interest Projects. That's my parent company. It's a for-profit real estate development company. What's different about this organization is they operate off 100% equity. So he could have been philanthropic with his wealth and just given it away or donated it or put it into a foundation. Instead, he wanted to activate it and treat it like a revolving fund. So his inheritance basically went into all of these buildings. 75% of his money goes into the sticks and bricks, the different buildings. We're mostly focused on residential upstairs, getting people living downtown. And then we reserve 25% to invest in entrepreneurs that start businesses at the ground floor of all of those buildings. We actually have a nightclub here called the Orange Peel. And one of our favorite investments is the Laughing Seed, which is the first vegetarian restaurant in Asheville. Now they went to go get a loan from the banks, and the banks basically looked at their menu and asked them, where's the pork? It's the pork state. Where's your barbecue? You gotta have barbecue. I mean, this is North Carolina. And they said, well, we're vegetarians, we don't do that. And the banks just said, there's no way this is gonna work. We've invested in them, they've paid us off, or paid us back, bought themselves out, whichever way you wanna look at it. But they're an anchor in our downtown. Asheville is now ranked in the top 10 vegetarian restaurants in the entire country because of this establishment that's come in behind them. They basically led the trend. So this is one of our buildings before and after. And we did a crazy thing. These are 400 to 600 square foot apartment units. So who in this room would live in a 400 to 600 square foot apartment? Got a couple hands? Let me change the question. Who in this room has lived in a 400 to 600 square foot apartment? That was our marketing study right there. That just saved us $18,000 asking that question. You know, we basically said these are 24 units. Surely, out of 83,000 people in Asheville, there's 24 people that are either new to town, recently graduated, downsizing, recently single, whatever. And it's been, in the real estate development world, this is called a home run. It's been 99% operating, leased up, ever since we opened the doors. There's a waiting list to get into this thing. And again, it's just by asking a different question. We didn't ask about what we wanted. We asked about what our community could handle and what's typical of a downtown. You know? So this is one of our buildings, or this is what downtown looked like when Julian was kicking around. And what's interesting is Julian actually had his own marketing campaign. He had his own magazine called City Watch. And I love this article that he published, and it was about billboards and putting billboards in the downtown. And I love this quote that he uses from Arthur Frommer. Among cities with no particular recreation appeal, those that have preserved their past continue to enjoy tourism. Those that haven't receive almost no tourism at all. Tourism simply doesn't go to a city that's lost its soul, which is heavy words to say about your town, right? In a way, you can hear Thomas Wolfe coming back and saying these things. Now, it's not that Julian was a Convention and Visitors Bureau booster. We're not members of that. We don't have a hotel. Why is he talking about tourism? What he was trying to do is he was trying to get us past to have a sense of community, a sense of soul, a sense of pride in our place. Interestingly, he passed away in 2005. 15 years after he published this, same building, Frommer's magazine would list us as the number 5 place in the country to visit. That's kind of heavy stuff, you know? But when we're looking at, we're seeing this stuff, we look at it a little bit differently. So not only is it interesting from an emotional standpoint, how do you show this from a data standpoint? I love this quote from Michael Bloomberg. In God we trust, and for everyone else bring the data. Can you show the information of what's going on financially, what's going on with our investments, but also with the community? So what we were seeing with downtown, this is what downtown was worth when it was all boarded up, about $100 million of taxable value for the boundary of downtown. We didn't build a new building, and just the community didn't get a new building in this downtown until about 2008. So these first 2 steps were just by activating those existing buildings, just by filling up assets that were already there. The community basically had $500 million of wealth sitting around that they weren't using. Does that all make sense? So we were able to cultivate revenue on assets that were already there. Our portfolio rose 400%. Incidentally, we're somewhere around 700 million right now. But what we started thinking is, why aren't people thinking of it this way? Why aren't they thinking about cultivating their wealth the way that a farmer does? When a farmer looks at their field, the farmer seeing their field is a grid of acres. Is this land that has a cost to cultivate in fertilizer, water, labor, and then crop yield. And they're making financial and economic decisions about what to till. They're not just going out there and doing the whole field. So if we could do the same thing with cities and look at these buildings. This is one of our buildings. It's an old JCPenney's building, upper stories residential, office on the second floor, retail here. The city came in and did a streetscape project, and we took it on the chin because the city did a streetscape project right in front of our building. So they subsidized our property. We didn't pay for the sidewalk, right? So we got a garbage can, a bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree, and those children's children freaked out about it. Why are you giving money to those downtown people? And we're like, thank you very much. We get the idea, we understand the plan. You want us to invest in downtown, we'll do that. You'll do more streetscape projects, that's good for everybody. People can walk around now. So we fixed the building. We took it from $300,000 of value, that's what it looked like, to $11 million. That represents a 3,500% increase in our tax bill, right? By taking it from one value to a higher value. Or another way of looking at it, our community now has 3,500% more revenue off one asset to cultivate more wealth. They can go out and do more bike lanes, more whatever, thanks to us. Did y'all get that? Do y'all have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? Anyone? You do?
I wish.
This is what happens. These are community assets, right? We're all tied together. So my community of Asheville now has a rising portfolio. Now, why aren't people seeing that? You know, we'll talk about that building, and people will be like, well, Joe, there's this Walmart over here. That Walmart's worth $20 million. That's a huge number. That Walmart pays about $270,000 in property taxes. That's a really big number. All right, well, let's compare that against my house over here. This is my house. That's my wife, Caroline. These are my dogs. My dogs think they're lions. They're a little weird. But, you know, Caroline and I are at about 1/10 of an acre. We're paying $2,000 in taxes. So if you had a 1-acre cookie cutter that fell from space and dropped into our neighborhood, it hit 10 houses, right? Y'all follow that? Everybody's on 1/10 of an acre. So that's about $20,000 an acre in taxes. You take that same 1-acre cookie cutter, float it in space, drop it into Walmart, it's paying $6,500. Did y'all get that? Now what if you had an acre of our building downtown? This is what you get. Chuck and I were presenting in Denver, and I wanted to really make it simple for the people in Denver. And I said to them, if you only had an acre to grow something in Denver, what are you going to grow? Wheat, soybeans, or marijuana? Yeah, they got it. It's a cash crop, right? Anyway, putting it aside, because y'all are probably thinking, well, Joe, that's great, it's property taxes. Surely Walmart makes it up in retail taxes, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, is sales. So Caroline and I don't sell anything, so let's remove us. Now let's run the numbers on the retail sales. Again, we get distracted by the big number without seeing the numbers behind it. That's the total sales. That's not what you get. That's what happens inside the store. What the city gets is a portion of that. In our case, 8 cents on the dollar of sales tax. The city got, at that time, 27% of that 8 cents. Now the reality of it is it's actually down to about 9 cents in my community, but we'll go ahead and take this 27 cents, what used to be what we got before. That's $47,000 an acre, or a total tax per acre of $51,000 an acre. This is just the property taxes you're getting. You add the retail taxes, now we're at $414, you're cooking with gas. I mean, how do you want to look at it? There's jobs per acre. You know, when you put the numbers side by side and you let the numbers do the talking, which one gives you more community return? Which one gives you more potency from a taxable basis, from a retail taxable basis, from a jobs? How do you want to look at it? The numbers speak for themselves as long as you normalize it on what you can control, which is the dirt. Did y'all get that? So this isn't scary math that I'm doing here. It's actually pretty simple. I don't have a financial expertise. I don't have an MBA. This is all looking at the world and just making a simple change in how we look at the numbers. Normalize it on a per acre basis. So again, that's the city side. what's good for the downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county. So you realize that the city is sitting inside a county, so it's paying county taxes too. So here we look at the residential. So on a per acre basis, the city resident's paying about $1,700 to the county, while somebody out in the county is paying $1,200. And again, this is just the numbers that's out there. Now when someone brings the mall into this, you see why a county commissioner might be motivated to do a mall over residential. This is what you get with commercial, $8,000 an acre out of this mall, versus residential in under $2,000. Did y'all get that? It's kind of an interesting presentation with the lightning and thunder stuff. It's dramatic. So why stop there? Let's go into the downtown and see what we do. So here's the mall here at $8,000 an acre in county taxes. Here's our building downtown at $250,000 an acre. So again, you see the potency of what happens in the downtown and why the county should be motivated to cultivate that wealth as well. So it shouldn't just be an argument that you all have with the city. Shelby County needs to be in this conversation too. So why am I bringing this stuff up this way? And really what I want to do is I want to read this bottom line here and ask the question about what government is. So this is from Webster's Dictionary, and this is the definition of incorporation. Incorporation is the forming of a new corporation. The corporation may be a business, a nonprofit, a sports club, or a government of a new city or town. So government is corporation. Government is business. You have a chartered area that you manage, that you all are shareholders in. Assuming you all are living in Memphis, you're in the Memphis Corporation, but you're also in the Shelby Corporation. You get it? So you're essentially a shareholder. The citizen is a shareholder in two forms of government that you control through your taxation. That's your sharehold and ownership. And what you pay in should be cultivated and grown. Does that make sense? So the city, back to that question, is essentially a finite boundary of land. That's all you have. Shelby County can't go and annex the next county over. That's all it is. And how Memphis operates should be thought of as a cash flow as well. Did y'all get that? So in Asheville's case, Asheville is worth $10 billion with a B. That's a huge number. It's actually 3 times Donald Trump's portfolio wealth. So we're 3 times the Donald, or another way of looking at it, we're worth more than all these sports teams combined. Right? The Titans are only worth $1 billion. We're like 10 times the Titans. So when these businesses operate, do you think they're making financial decisions about players they pick, about how they operate? Of course. So are you doing the same thing? Are you understanding the ramifications of development patterns to see what's bringing you wealth and what's not? So oftentimes we try to help communities see the money flow and see how design decisions actually affect their pocketbook. So we did an analysis in Sarasota, Florida, and they actually, we basically asked the simple question, if I as a developer were to build this happens to be some godforsaken place in Arizona somewhere, but if I were to build that, what do I do when I build it? And what I do is I keep track of all the soft costs, the architect's drawings, the landscape architect's drawings. I also keep track of all the hard costs, the buildings, the roads, whatever. And all of those costs have to be recouped in order for me to make a profit and make the deal work, right? So I just divide all the costs by the rooftops. When the government gets this thing plugged onto the road here, does the government go out there and figure out how much it costs to have this in their community? What does it cost for police, for fire, for water, for schools, and do they charge it accordingly? And the short answer is no. They just send out an assessor to figure out a value, and they are paying a tax percentage on that value, completely disconnected to cost. What other business operates that way? If I were to buy this clicker, don't you think Logitech would figure out how much it costs to make the clicker before it sold it? Of course. But in cities, we don't do that. So I'm not the first person to ask this question. It's actually this guy here. In 1973, the Nixon administration published this book called The Cost of Sprawl, where they gave all the data to every community across the country and said, look, land patterns have a cost to you all, figure it out. They did the math. And it's kind of interesting, not a lot of people realize, but he's the godfather of the word sprawl, but there it is. So Florida actually replicated that at a more localized level. So we used their math, And you see that they did the public facility costs per dwelling unit from the downtown to scattered. The more you spread people out, the more the cost is. It's real simple. If you have a mile of pipe and you put 50 people on it, it's more expensive than a mile of pipe with 5,000 people on it. You're just dividing the cost by more people, so the unit cost goes down. Did y'all get that? So we grabbed a couple of these that we were seeing in Sarasota with the downtown versus some semi-suburban stuff. Went out into the burbs and grabbed some multifamily, and then went into the downtown and grabbed some multifamily. And we said, okay, there's 357 units. Let's just run it apples to apples. So let's pluck out 357 units out of the downtown and let them sit side by side financially. So here's the downtown in dark green. Here's the suburban pattern in light green. Same number of units. One consumes 30 acres, one consumes 3 acres. So the land out of the portfolio is 1/10 consumed in that urban footprint versus the suburban footprint. You get that? So 1/10 of your asset is used. The public cost is 57% difference. You actually cost less to service those people because the service area is smaller than the suburban pattern, yet you're making 830% more money. So you're getting more revenue. And I'm not making this up. This is straight out of their tax rolls. We just pulled the numbers out. So you're making 870% more than that. So if this is my mortgage here, and this is Chuck's, we'll take Chuck's mortgage back there. That's my annual payment. This is Chuck's annual payment. How long will it take the two of us to pay off our mortgages? Let's look at it that way. So it'll take me 42 years. It takes Chuck 3. Now in real estate development world, when we have cost, income, and time, I can do my ROI, or my return on investment, right? So the ROI to a county in this situation is a 2% ROI for the suburban pattern. It's an 18% ROI for the urban pattern. Did y'all get that? Like, what kind of return rate would you want in your savings account or your Christmas fund? You want a 2% return rate or an 18% return rate? 18, obviously. You guys are awfully quiet. Is it too late to be talking numbers, or how you doing? All right? Now, I was presenting this in Idaho, and there were like cowboys in the audience with like cowboy vests and cowboy boots, and a couple of them had guns. And one guy came up to me, he's like, look, Joe, we're cowboys. These are way too many charts. Just show it to us in year 20. I was like, all right, well, here it is. So in year 20, after 20 years of operation, you've produced $34 million over your note in the urban pattern. You're still in the hole, $5 million with the suburban pattern. So think about what you all have done, every community has been building for the last 40 years. We're essentially building development patterns that are upside down financially, and when we don't have money in our budget, it's because it's buried, still in the hole still. We're just not building our way out of it. We don't have enough of this stuff to compensate for those losses. Does that make sense? So, you know, to quote Chief Justice Brandeis, these are the relentless rules of humble arithmetic. It's just simple math to show this stuff. We've done it all across the country, and we see these patterns over and over and over again. Basically, for every dollar of county single-family development, a city resident's paying about $8 to the county. The Walmart's paying about $7 for every dollar of single-family county. The mall's about double Walmart, and as soon as you get into mixed-use development in the green here, it starts to shoot up. This could be for the tiniest town, Driggs, Idaho, out in the middle of nowhere in Idaho, I think 2,000 people in the entire county, to Nashville, Tennessee. It starts to shoot up. And it's not a proportional growth, it's an exponential growth. We can cultivate our wealth out of main streets. It's not to say don't do this stuff, it's just realize that that's where your money is. And you can't build your way out of an upside down portfolio where you've got too much of the stuff that's not bringing in your wealth. And I'm using the per acre analysis to talk about efficiency from an economic standpoint. We already do this, we're used to doing this. When we talk about cars, we don't talk about cars on a mile per tank basis, do we? You know, if we did, we'd all be driving Ford F-150s at 650 miles per tank, right? Yet when we talk about architecture, when we talk about buildings, it's this $25 million project here, this $10 million project there. Of what? You know, why do we focus on that big number instead of figuring out its efficiency? What's it giving you? When we say miles per gallon instead of miles per tank, look what happens. The numbers change. I didn't change the cars, and we should all be driving BMW Asettas at 70 miles per gallon. Sorry to your Prius owners in the audience, but 1955 technology is better. It's also a much more dangerous car, which is kind of cool. Y'all get this? I'm being cute with the numbers, but I want you to see we already do this. So that's why we recommend the per acre analysis. So really what this is about bringing data and evidence of the data to you all to make better decisions in your communities. So we did an analysis over in Nashville, which is a deeper drill down. We compared our downtowns. I'll just blow through this. We thought it was funny that we actually have more beer than they do. This is Asheville, this is Nashville. We were about 5,000 people per brewery. They're at about 90,000 people per brewery, so we're doing good. Or we have a problem, depending on how you want to look at it. They also compared, an interesting study that they did before we got there was a study on new urbanism development. This is a development called Lenox Village. It's a suburban development out on the edge of town with commercial, high-density, multifamily, and then single-family kind of all blended together in this walkable environment. Right across the street, this is it here, right across the street is this other development called Bradford Hills, which is your conventional cul-de-sac residential with this little buffer of commercial here. And they ran the return on investment, so the community cost and the revenue combined to see what the city and county would net out. And they basically networked this way. Oh, sorry, they also did the gulch. We'll bring that up in a second. So this is the suburban pattern. The conventional development nets out about $100 an acre. The new urban community nets out 7 times that of positive revenue. When you bring the downtown into it, the reason why the downtown's not in this chart, or actually the gulch, it's not even downtown. This is what it looks like. So here are those other 2 developments. Here's the gulch. This is the net return over the cost. So this is what this community ends up with on a per acre basis. Y'all get that? So we did their map, and part of the way that we do the mapping is we want to bring new technology in to see the way that the community operates financially, much in the way that our doctors do this on our bodies. So if they want to see your hard tissue, they'll do an x-ray, and we get the hard tissue information, right? Your skeletal information. Change the software, change the machine, do an MRI, we can see soft tissue, right? You can even do this crazy stuff called, I don't even know what you call it. It's a triarchal transformation, 3-dimensional image of your brain, basically. So we do the same thing with cities, and we map their value. And this is the way Davidson County, which is Nashville, looks at a county level. This is the value per acre of where they're getting their revenue in their community. You can see downtown popping out right there. Or when you go into the city level, here's downtown, you see all of this hot value of over $6 million an acre, and then this is how it tapers down to exempt. Green is about $250,000 an acre, and purple is $6 million an acre and greater. So you can see the hot spot, and then as the value goes out toward Vanderbilt University here. So in the downtown, which is the most fertile soil, they also have the problem of being a state capital. So where they're getting the most potency out of their downtown, they also have the most land off their tax base. They're about 50% exempt. So that's a real issue in their community. By the way, you should send them a big thank you note for that, for being the state capital and suffering with that. You're paying for it. Another thing is, well, actually they're paying more than you all, probably. But another thing is we use different technology to change the information. There's a mapping program called cartogramming. This is a map from 1921 where they mapped the energy consumption of the United States. So the highest energy consumer at that point was New York. And they're 10 times the size of Wisconsin. That means they're 10 times the consumer. So they change the shape of things based on value. So we use this basically old technique with new software and did the cartogram of Davidson County. So here's Davidson County, here's its cartogram, so you can feel the potency of downtown. Let's put them side by side. So this is what downtown is in the area, but that's how it feels financially. Did y'all get that? Or another way of doing it, we did just zooming into the city level and doing its cartogram. That's how it feels. Or another way of thinking about it, the land area of that square feels like it's 15 times greater of potency. So where is the community getting its money? How can it cultivate more wealth? How does it do that? We just try to bring that information there so they can at least see where they're getting it. Did y'all get that? We also do it three-dimensionally. Can y'all tell me where downtown is? Yeah, there it is. Boom. And then here's the area out to Vanderbilt. So we basically talk about, here's the gulch. They just need to fill in the gulch, they'll be doing all right. So focus more on the priorities where they can cultivate more of their wealth. This is the side view of the community, side view of the model, and then here's its like pulse financially. So they peak out at $191 million per acre. So just to kind of recap, here's some building types. So there's the Walmart at about 1.2 million an acre of value. Here's their malls at about 1.8 million. Well, let's call it 2 million for the regular malls. They have a really good mall that's near the community of Bellevue, or Belmead, and there it is at 8 million an acre. That's a really potent mall, by the way. This is probably one of the most valuable malls we've ever seen at 8 million an acre. But what's crazy is they're getting infill buildings in and around in the neighborhoods that are starting at around 7 million. So they're basically as potent as their best mall, just doing these little projects, filling in the gaps in their neighborhoods. You get into the Gulch, now you're at 16 million an acre. And when you get into Music Row, you're hitting 20 million. You get into downtown, you're topping out around 136 million an acre. So here's this is their bar chart. Here's Walmart here. Here's their regular malls. Here's their good mall at about $129,000 an acre of tax production for the county. These are buildings downtown. We'll come back to this building, the Wannabes, at 3 million an acre of production. The other thing that we saw in their downtown is it's not only just a property tax generator, it's a retail tax generator. Incidentally, it's illegal to have this information in North Carolina, so at least we can get it here in Tennessee. That's how progressive we are, by the way. The land area of downtown in the county is about 0.3% of the land area. Here's the rest of the county. Here's the county's downtown retail tax production. Here's the rest of the county. So their downtown is actually the biggest retail tax producer versus all of the other malls. Who would have thought in downtown Nashville you're actually more competitive from a retail standpoint than a mall that's 100% retail? And again, this is the data. We're not making this up, it's just out there. So this is the property tax, retail tax, and total tax production of Nashville is a three-dimensional model. The other thing that we started noticing is the older buildings. That here's a building, there's a postcard of it from 1905, there's like horses and carriages. There's the building. Even after they deface it and rip the top of it off, really nice top, by the way. Sorry to the architects in the audience, it's kind of offensive to see this happen to a building. But it's still worth 42 million an acre. Now remember, the good mall was 8 million an acre. So if you had 5.8 acres of that building, it would equal the entire 30-acre good mall. Or, my favorite building, the karaoke bar. There it is, the Tequila Cowboy. This 51-acre mall could be equaled by about a half acre of that. Isn't that crazy? So if you're running a community, if you're a board of director running this corporation called Nashville, you're elected to lead this community. What kind of way can you cultivate your wealth quicker and faster and more potently? How hard is it to do a half acre of that? That's the question to ask yourself. What gives you more bang for the buck? So Memphis. We ran some numbers on Memphis. We didn't have the whole thing. Tommy and the city staff actually produced some maps. It's going to get past the assessor. These are the maps. I won't go into them, but they basically have all the data there to show you where you're getting your value and potency, but also where you're spending your revenue. So these red dots are expense. So you've got a lot of expense out here, and you don't see any, it's all gray. That means there's very little revenue return out there versus here you're seeing a lot of yellow, which means you're getting a lot of revenue return, and you're also making capital improvements there as well. So you all are doing this. You have which is a great start. So we just grabbed some examples. This is one of my favorites. This is the Wolf Chase Galleria Mall. And just to give the mall a fighting chance, we grabbed all of its out parcels all around it, the satellites. So that whole area is about 142 acres of land. That's worth $81 million. But on a per acre basis, you're looking at about $500,000 an acre for that development, right? And again, this is all in Shelby County, so
This is one of your brothers and sisters out there paying taxes. So there it is. Just a couple doors down, that building right next to TJ Mulligan, so we're kind of like right over here somewhere. It's $35,000, let's say 35 and a half on 0.09 acres. So that's a $405,000 an acre tax producer. Did y'all get that? You remember Wolf Chase, right? $500,000. This is almost as good as a producer as Wolf Chase. The building right next to it, this guy, is actually better by almost 3 times than Wolf Chase. It's kind of amazing. You get in out here on Broad Street. This is Victory Bicycle. This is more productive. That little building is more productive than the mall on a per square foot, per acre, per whatever basis. Pound for pound, this is punching above its weight. You get into downtown, now you're looking at 6.9 million an acre of value, again, versus $500,000 out of Wolf Chase. This was kind of interesting. This is the Exchange building here, 3.7 million an acre of value. And what's amazing is, and this is the thing that pulls on my heartstrings as an architect, this is a building that's been around your community for 100 years. You know? Your great-grandparents brought this thing to your community one way or another. And it's been a high-performing asset in your community at a high level for generations. Is the Wolf Chase Mall going to be here 100 years from now? It's that simple. You know? Just down the street, this guy here, the Porter building, is 11, let's say 12 million an acre. Now again, Wolf Chase Mall is $500,000. So basically, if you had 7 acres,